Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Physiology of Endurance Running podcast. I'm your host, Dan Nash, and I'm joined by co-host Owain. Sorry, but it's been a little bit of a break from our last podcast, about 3 weeks now, but we've just both been super busy. What have you been up to, Owain? Do you want to go?
I've been in the depths of research, so some very long days. I think when I have a participant in, I'm getting in at 6 a.m. and maybe getting home at 8:30 at night. So pretty full on. But no, I enjoy it. It's really good fun, but I have no spare time.
Yeah.
And then Dan's been jetting across the world to Berlin.
I have, yeah. If you didn't catch it, I was pacing Philly Bowden at the Berlin Marathon, which was great fun. I'd never done a pacing job before, but yeah, right, really good fun. We nailed the pacing. If you hadn't seen it, Philly, she so training gone really well, but she did Houston Marathon, I think it was, in like January, February time this year, and basically blew up really badly. So it was quite determined not to do that again. So we thought, right, training's gone really well, but we want to have a good experience and make sure we get a solid one in, don't gamble it again and then have a end up with a disappointing time. So we started with a 2:27 pace. We bang on that halfway, just outside. I think we went through in like 73:39 or something, but fine. And then she was feeling good. We just picked it up. Last 5K was crazy. We ran like 16:50 and ended up with a 2:25:47, I think she got. So yeah, obviously she was delighted with that. Eighth or ninth fastest Brit all time. She finished 15th in the elite field at Berlin. So yeah, that was very cool to be part of that. And you don't know Philly Bowden, massive on YouTube, Instagram, I think she's got getting on the 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, and her catchphrase is "love the grind." So literally, like every minute, we were just getting shouted at, "Love the grind, go on, great work, Philly." So that was pretty cool. It was a really good atmosphere, like 50th anniversary of Berlin as well. So that was but I've not been to Berlin before, but really cool city, really cool marathon. Conditions are perfect, super flat course. So I'm definitely go back there and have a go at it myself, I think, sometime.
I think a nice, like, we talked about that. We talked about the pacing before, didn't we, on a previous episode? But like a nice emphasis that you can get a lot of time back in the second half. Like,
yeah,
I think it's easy to say it, but you can do it as well, and you've shown it.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of time back. You could argue maybe we should have gone out slightly more aggressively, but in the context, I think we got it spot on. I think if we could have, you never know exactly. She didn't think she was in that good a shape. She thought she was a really, a 2:26 low maybe, but she didn't really think she was in a 2:25. The goal was go to 2:27 halfway. Hopefully we can pick up a bit. We're on a 2:26. So I think if we try to be a bit more aggressive, then there's always a chance it could backfire. And it just shows you, like, she ran like a half marathon PB in the second half, so she was obviously really fit. But you can take such amount of time back just by being a bit more conservative. So yeah, I think got the pacing right, and her heart rate was super stable throughout. You can see you can go onto a Strava and have a look, like really stable, which is nice. Shows you're in control. It was a good confidence booster for me because my heart rate was fantastic. Like, I averaged 1:48 for a 2:25 marathon, and normally running like 1:65, 1:66 average. So that was a nice confidence booster for me. Maybe we'll talk a bit about that later in an upcoming episode, but we'll talk a bit more about that later. So yeah, it was a good trip, but pretty exhausting in terms of just the travel. Like, long day for me. Got up at 5:30 in the morning before the marathon, did the marathon, flew back at 10 o'clock that night, got back to my house at 1:30 in the morning. So yeah, great fun, but tiring.
I think we're both absolutely shattered this week, aren't we? think.
Yeah. No, my son, no, he's not sleeping either. 2.5 years old, still hasn't got a message. But yeah, so I've been flagging a bit after doing that, coming back, and then just back to reality. It's always a bit tough, isn't it? But yeah, again, both been busy, but we're back recording an episode. And what we're going to talk about? What we're going to talk about today?
So we're going to be talking about durability, or fatigue resistance. Sorry. It's started to be referred to in research as the fourth dimension of physiology. We covered the other three in our previous episode. So just as a reminder, they're VO2 max, lactate thresholds or fractional utilization, and then economy. And then durability is emerging as this sort of, as I say, fourth dimension of physiology, especially relating to marathon and I guess longer distances. And we briefly mentioned it last week as well, or last time, that it's becoming big, or it's been quite big, I think, in cycling for quite a long time.
Yeah, I think it's not a new concept, I think, but it's just it's becoming a bit of a shiny object at the minute, and there's definitely a bit of a research boom in it, certainly in the cycling world.
I think you'd anecdotally hear, like, from professional cyclists, that one of their sort of like tests to determine if they're in shape, or like if a new team was looking at them, would be to do a certain amount of work and then essentially do a like max effort, which is sort of like a way of looking at durability, but that's happened before it's then maybe being quantified in research. So research catching up with what maybe real life and professional sport is doing.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I think just clarifying like how it fits into our physiological model that we spoke about in a previous podcast. Like, we've got your VO2 max, that's your top end ceiling. Your threshold is going to determine what percentage of your VO2 max you can sustain during a race, during a marathon. So you have to stick just below your threshold, your LT2. Your economy dictates like what oxygen consumption, what speed you get out of that oxygen consumption. So how good are you converting oxygen into speed? But then actually, some people are more durable than others. So actually, if you're more durable, you're going to be able to sit a bit closer to your LT2. Are you going to be able to hold your LT2 speed for longer? Like they say, LT2 you can hold for about an hour. I think that's a good rule of thumb. Some people can definitely hold it longer than an hour. Some people might not be able to hold it for an entire hour. So actually, that makes quite a big difference to your performance, especially at the top end. That might be the thing that's differentiates you. Like you need your VO2 max to be good enough. You need your thresholds and your economy to be good enough. But then like this fourth dimension is durability. And I do think it's the fourth. It's not. I don't think it's the biggest determinant of performance. I think if you can be as durable as you like. If your LT2 is not good enough, well, you're not going to be able to run the marathon time that you want. Right? If your LT2 is like 6 minute mile pace, 3:45 a k, then you need to be able to, however durable you are, you're not going to be able to hold that for a marathon. Like you're going to have to be sitting, at like 6:15 a mile, like that sort of, like, what's that, about 4 minute a k, bit faster, 3:55 a k, that sort of pace. You're not going to be able to hold LT2. But if you're more durable, you're going to be able to sit closer to that. So I guess this is sort of an extension of our last podcast we put out.
Yeah, I guess it's an application of those sort of three determinants of performance across a length of time. So the way it sort of gets presented is that those, you go into the lab for some testing and you get that data, and it's going to be in a pretty fresh state. Like if you're training, you're going to be slightly fatigued, but you're going to be coming in a fresh state. You're not going to have done an hour run before you come into the lab. But then what are those physiological markers looking like an hour or 2 hours into running? That's what durability is. It's how much are those impacted by an amount of work.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, we test someone in a fresh state. That's really useful information. And I'd always say, if you've never been tested before, 100% come in a fresh state, so we can see what you actually if you were on the start line, what would your physiology look like? But if we tested you at 20 miles into a marathon, your physiology is not going to look the same. Your economy is going to be worse. Your thresholds as a percentage of a VO2 max, you're probably going to be lower. Your VO2 max is very likely to be lower, but there's going to be some room there. Some people are going to be able to be closer to their fresh state at 20 miles compared to others, and that's going to influence performance enough for us to be talking about on this podcast.
I was gonna say as well, don't come into the lab after running an hour. We'll test your durability another way.
No, don't do that. There's probably better ways of doing it.
I was gonna say, from experience, I can tell you it's really not fun doing like we've both done some durability studies, and like it's not fun doing a ramp test at the end of 90 minutes of running or whatever we did.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about that briefly. How we did this. We were involved with a study that looked to try and assess durability, which was basically we on a first day on visit 1, we did a submax test to failure, basically. So it was 3-minute stages looking at lactate, heart rate, RPE, VO2. So we can establish your thresholds, economy, etc. Then we did a 90-minute run at just above our first threshold, so LT1, just hard enough as itself. We had like lactate, gas data measured throughout, heart rate, RPEs, and then finished that and repeated the submax tests. So you've done 90 minutes of running at not far off marathon pace, pretty much marathon pace, is a little bit slower, and then repeated the submax tests. And yeah, that's pretty horrible. Because a sub-max test, people go, oh, easy, sub-max, it's not a max test, but sub-max test is going to finish at a 9 out of 10 effort, pretty much, as a rule of thumb. And yeah, it was not pleasant, but interesting data, which maybe we can talk about at another time. But I guess we can give some. So I say another time, like we can give some to help just describe what durability is. I guess we can say what we'd expect to happen. Or what does happen is that, we were obviously running at a fixed speed in that study, but you start to see a drift in heart rate, which is the obvious one that people will be familiar with. You see this when we talked about how to pace a marathon. We factored in actually your heart rate is going to drift up over the course of the marathon. Like that's just part of you can use that as a proxy for durability. If you're seeing a decoupling between your speed and your heart rate, then that is a sign that you are fatiguing. You're having to work harder to put out the same amount of speed, and that is often what's quite used in some like big studies to look at durability. But we also see drifts in oxygen consumption and obviously like your perceived exertion as well.
Yeah, there's, I mean, like one of the sort of big bits of research is literally just looking at a massive data set of heart rate decoupling over a marathon. I think it's got like 82,000 participants in.
82,303.
Yeah. And like there's loads of reasons why your heart rate's going to decouple from your speedy running, but again, sort of makes sense. But they found the people that had less decoupling ran better marathons. There's loads to it that might not be durability. Like the people that had high decoupling could have just not eaten or drunk during the marathon, could have turned up with, not very full glycogen reserves, could have run a bit too fast. Yeah,
paced it badly. I mean, that's the thing. That's the balance with these like big data set studies. It's always a compromise between really controlled, tightly regulated study where you've got 15, 20 people in it, or a study where you've got 82,000 people in it, but you haven't got that control. They've just pulled this off of Strava, basically, haven't they? I'm pretty sure, or some platform like that. And you can probably get trends, but it's hard to be super precise. Like why? Because if you go out too hard in a marathon, you are gonna see much bigger decoupling compared to when you're fresh. Like those people have hit the wall at 20 miles and jogged it in. Well, you're jogging it in terms of pace, but the effort is super high and your heart rate is so much higher than it normally would be if you were to run at that pace. You can be at a pace which is just like an easy run pace, and your heart rate is super high and your effort level is obviously super high as well. So you've had massive decoupling, which is not necessarily to do with your durability, it's just because you've gone out too hard hit the wall and blown up.
So I think hitting the wall is another good sort of transition to another reason why what might factor into durability. So glycogen depletion is sort of another suggested reason why one person might be more durable than another. So glycogen intake, obviously during a marathon, is really important. You need to be taking on fuel to replenish, or to not even replenish, but just to be able to reach the end of the marathon without running out of glycogen stores. And just on glycogen depletion, there's a few bits of work that have looked at using sort of 40 and 80-minute bouts of exercise to look at durability, and you don't really see much sort of impact of glycogen depletion. But once you get above 90 minutes, that's where glycogen depletion sort of plays a factor. So that's another thing that's at play when we're talking about durability, is that maintaining glycogen intake is really important. And that's where, talking about other episodes, maintaining that sort of 90 grams an hour plus of carbohydrate intake is really important, because that's going to affect your durability as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think we can go back into actually how do we think we can influence durability, but I think just to take a couple of steps back, I guess what we can ask, how do we know if someone's durable or not? And for me, like if we can tell if someone's durable in to an extent by actually how close can they run to their LT2, their lactate turn point, maximal lactate steady state, critical speed, whatever you want to call it, for a marathon. So I've had, I've from my own data and from people I've seen from others, like if you're someone who's got a good LT2, or maybe your half marathon paces, you've got a good half marathon pace, but you're just not converting that into a good marathon, then maybe it's durability that is your weakness. So like typically elite athletes can hold 95-96% of their LT2 speeds during a marathon. And I think I've said this before, partly that's because they're running fast. Like if you're running a marathon in low 2 hours, then obviously you're going to be able to hold closer to LT2 than if you're taking 3.5, 4 hours to run your marathon. But if you're someone who's running in that sort of region, so you're running about 2.5 hour marathon, but actually you're finding you're only running at 90% of your LT2, then that's a really good indicator that the thing that's letting you down is not your thresholds, it's not your VO2 max, it's not your economy, it's your durability. So for that person, actually what's stopping you from having a breakthrough is being more durable. Now, if that person improves their LT2, their economy, then they're gonna still run a faster marathon. But one of the things where one of the untapped components there is definitely like durability. I mean, I can give you a specific example that when I ran Valencia last year, I did a lab. I could do for every marathon. I did a lab test. LT2 came out as like 19.8 kilometers an hour, something like that. I think from memory, 19.8, 19.9, so like as best as it's ever been, basically. That's just nearly 3-minute Ks, 450 a mile pace. And for me, I typically had held like 95-96% of my threshold during a marathon. So going into Valencia, I was thinking, right, if I held that pace, that'd be like a 2:13 marathon. So my best before it was like a 2:15. So I was thinking, well, best case scenario, I could run 2:13 here. And I was still delighted. I ran 2:15, which was a PB by a few seconds, but also I'd not been in that great a shape for about 18 months after adjusting to family life with an 18-month-old at the time. But yeah, still delighted. But actually, what I hadn't done in training was that much long specific stuff. So I'd done some marathon specific sessions, I'd done some fast long runs, but going into it, I just knew I wasn't fit enough. My LT2 wasn't in good enough shape. And like I said earlier, like you can't run faster than your LT2 during a marathon. So my focus had always been, right, get that threshold a bit better, get it a bit better. And then I sort of surprised myself when it was as good as it was. I was thinking, oh, well, crap, I've overdone this a little bit. I've overcompensated, got it, like, I've got it, it's fantastic, it's in that place, but I hadn't emphasized as much as I probably needed to do the longer efforts, the longer hard marathon specific stuff, which is probably going to help your durability more. And so it works out that I probably held like 92% of my LT2, which isn't awful, but a bit off what I have done previously, I think.
Yeah, it's just another lever you can pull in training, and especially when you have the data that you get from lab testing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the thing, like having a good bank of data, like because I've got a threshold test from before the last 5 marathons or something like that, and having it before one marathon is great, but when you can really see the trends by doing it multiple times, that's when it becomes more powerful. You can have more confidence in the data as well, because there's always going to be some noise in the data. You're always going to be a little bit of measurement error, some just daily variation in your physiology. Whereas if you've got one big outlier, you can say, well, why is that? Like, is it because of the training I did? Is it because of how I felt on the day? Other factors, and then you can really start to. I think the more data you have, like that data set when we looked at the 83,000 people, the more power that gives you, and you can find smaller trends and see smaller effect sizes. So it is, the more data, the better, I think.
Yeah. So I guess how do we, as you sort of mentioned, you didn't train durability before Valencia. I guess how would we actually go about training it? And I realize that's a rhetorical question, maybe, because we don't know. There's no
I mean, like, you said lots of papers are coming out now on this factor of durability, and I don't think there's still not really consensus on what improves durability. I saw one paper which was just looking at, it was cyclists for a start, and they were like recreational cyclists, and they found that both easy running and high intensity running, so easy cycling and high intensity cycling both improve durability. But to be honest, like, if you're a recreationally active runner, by that I mean you're training a couple of times a week, maybe, you're not following a structured training program, which I imagine all our listeners are following some sort of structure, which is including easy days and hard days and doing frequent training. Well, if I took someone who was, recreationally active, and I gave them a structured training program, it's going to improve everything. It's going to improve their VO2 max, their thresholds, their economy, their durability, because it's just a completely new stimulus. I think for someone like myself, who's been training for many, many years, you probably need to be a bit more specific than just go and do some training.
And maybe also relates to how there's not really a way of measuring durability either, is there? You can infer it, and like Dan said, where you can look at what percentage of LT2 you held for a marathon, but that's maybe an indirect measure. That's looking at an outcome, whereas there's no way to measure. There's no way for you to know before you started Valencia, is my durability good or bad? And if we can't measure it, then it's hard to then prescribe ways to improve it.
100%. That goes back to us scientists not having a clear definition of what is durability, because we've sort of loosely said, your physiology at the end of a marathon is not going to be the same as the start, but what are we going to measure? Are we talking about heart rate? Are we talking about your RPE? Are we talking about your drift in oxygen consumption? So we have worsening economy. Like, we could measure muscle glycogen stores. We could measure, nervous system activity. So we could do one of the things that one tool that researchers use is doing like an involuntary maximal contraction of your muscle. So you can effectively give someone an electric shock, see how much your quad contracts. So it's not about how much voluntary contraction, like it's not getting someone to do a leg extension just and how much can you push. It's physically, like, if we completely activate the nervous system, the neurons supplying the quad, like, what force do you get out? And you could do that you could do that before a marathon and at the end of a marathon, and that could be a test of, durability. But basically, there's not any clear-cut way of going or definition so far of what is durability. It's not like VO2 max where we go, okay, it's a maximum rate of oxygen consumption, where we tend to see a plateau with an increased exercise intensity, so your body cannot physically use any more oxygen. It's not like that, or economy, which is very clearly defined. What's the oxygen cost or energy or calorie cost of running at a given pace? Like, it's a bit fluffier than that. So that does make it a bit more difficult to do high quality research, because people are defining it in different ways. And I think everyone agrees it's a factor and it's a thing, but we haven't decided how we measure that thing and what precisely is it, which does make it throws up challenges.
I mean, like, just doing some reading for this, like, I wrote down the things that have been suggested to improve it. You've got long-term training, which that's going to improve everything, I think.
You'd hope so, yeah.
Yeah, you'd hope so. Then one person said maybe pyramidal training versus polarized training, so doing more what people would call gray zone, training in the middle, which, to be fair, you've mentioned where you said like fast long runs where you're pushing a bit above your first threshold might influence it, and maybe that's going to influence economy as well. I mean, I guess something we're going to touch on is like the training that would influence durability is probably going to influence your economy, and it's probably going to influence your VO2 max as well. Another one was training in a glycogen depleted state, which goes against a lot of other sort of training prescription at the moment, is, like actually fuel for the work required. And you're going to make your training in the subsequent days worse if you train in a glycogen depleted state. But then there's this suggestion that actually that might benefit durability. Got altitude here saying that training with a reduced O2 diffusion or oxygen diffusion might help durability, because you're training sort of at a greater intensity and there's going to be a bit more fatigue. But again, we don't really know. And as with altitude, that's very individualized. Individual carb utilization as well might influence it. Some people might be better at actually using carbohydrate, both like internal and external carbohydrates that you take on. But like Dan said,
I think all of them is a good suggestion, but they could all influence durability. Like, I think it's like, I guess it's a little bit like economy, but it's not as simple as being one primary determinant of running economy. It's a little bit about your biomechanics, a little bit about what's going on inside the muscle. Are you more fast twitch or a slow twitch athlete? How good are you at burning fat versus carbohydrate? What's your movement patterns like? It's a complex. Economy is simple to measure, but it's complex in terms of what determines economy. And I think durability is similar, but there's many factors that are going to influence durability, but with the extra challenge of we can't directly measure it, or we haven't decided what the best way of measuring it is. I think for me, you can sort of think about, in terms of what determines durability, you can think about it, and you can break it into two different sections. You can think of like the musculoskeletal durability. So actually, how resistant are your muscles to the pounding that you experience during a marathon, to actually running at a high percentage of your VO2 max for over 2 hours? Can you, from a muscular standpoint, withstand that? So are you still able to resist the forces that are going to go through your legs? So are you not basically collapsing around the ankle, knee, and hip when you're running? Can you maintain those mechanics? So I think that's one component to it. And then you've got a second component, which is the more physiological component to durability. So that's more about actually, have you got lots of muscle glycogen before you start training? Like, because we do know that actually, we can worsen your durability by giving you no glucose or no sugars during a marathon. Like, we all know that's going to end badly. and you're going to be less durable if you're just burning fats. So things like that, your fast, like slow switch muscle fibers are more fatigue resistant than fast switch muscle fibers. So if you've got if you're more slow, you've got a high proportion of slow switch muscle fibers, you're going to have better durability. So that's what I'm sort of talking about in terms of physiology versus more musculoskeletal durability. And then we've got to decide actually what training is going to influence those two factors.
Yeah, $1 million question, isn't it?
Yeah. And now I think there's a $1 million question, but I think there's a few things we can be pretty confident are going to improve your durability. I mean, I guess I've already spoken about, we've already alluded to fueling. So both making sure that you've got really high muscle glycogen before you start your marathon. So typical recommendations are 8 to 10 grams of carbohydrate per kilo of body weight.
Yeah, and the days, it's like 36 to 24 hours before, isn't it? Intake that much.
I think that's pretty much standard recommendation. So that's a lot of carbohydrate. While training is going to obviously be really, really low, you might be either doing nothing or just some very gentle, easy exercise. So that should be enough to top up your muscle glycogen stores, and then keeping on top of the fueling during the marathon as well. So yeah, as Owain said, 90 grams an hour, getting up to that sort of level. Maybe pushing it a little bit more, but I think it's then like risk versus reward in terms of GI distress and just comfort when running. So yeah, I think fueling definitely a big part of it. That is going to improve your durability. In terms of the training that might influence it, I said in my example, I hadn't done that many faster long runs, and I think certainly from a musculoskeletal standpoint, that does make a difference. I remember during Valencia marathon, but my heart rate was great, but I was really starting to feel like fatigue through the hips, especially from the halfway point. So I felt like the intensity was absolutely fine, but I was starting to feel that my hips tightening up a bit. And I think that was because although I'd done lots of running at fast and a marathon pace, I hadn't done that much extensive running like at marathon pace. So I've done loads of miles at faster than 5:10 a mile pace, which was what I averaged, 3:0:12 a K, but not continuously. So I think that makes a difference, doing stuff at that sort of prolonged running. So I'm a big favor of the Ingebrigtsen style threshold training, where instead you're doing intervals, and I think interval based threshold training I think makes you really fit. But at some point you need to get ready to run 26 miles 42K continuously at a fast pace. I think, I guess another thing is I guess on that topic, which is maybe going slightly off topic, I guess, but I'm in favor of a fast long run, which is fast but not actually quite at marathon pace. Because if, say, you want to stress, we're talking more about duration than intensity, and we want to do stuff that's pretty close to marathon pace. But if we run stuff at marathon pace, then how far are you going to go at marathon pace in a single run without it being just too fatiguing? Like, what do you reckon? People go up to 15 miles, like maybe 30K a push, 18 miles. I feel like
a marathon pace. Yeah, I think that's close to running your race before the race day, isn't it?
Well, exactly. Yeah. You might get a good benefit from that, but the fatigue is going to take the recovery time. The cost is quite high, so you're gonna have to go quite easy for a few days to recover from that. So doing 15, I think people often use a half marathon at marathon pace during their training as a good run, but actually is that enough to stress your durability? I don't know. You've only done half the distance, so I tend to be in favor of going a little bit slower than marathon pace. 10. What am I talking about? Yeah, so 10 seconds a K, 15 seconds a mile, but doing
you often hear like 95% of marathon pace, don't you? Like if you listen to Inside Running podcast, Brady's always doing a 95% of marathon pace, which is probably a good way to do it, isn't it? Like
I think that makes sense.
It's relative to you as well, isn't it? Rather than a round number. And like you said, it's better than a half marathon. Although to be honest, people probably race those as much anyway, don't they?
I know.
White line fever.
Yeah, but in terms of like durability, well, doing a half marathon marathon pace is specific in terms of the intensity, but it's probably not. That's not where you're going to really experience that decoupling in heart rate and RPE. It's going to be at 30k, 18, 19, 20 miles plus where you really start to experience that. So you're not actually stressing that system much by doing a half marathon at marathon pace. But like you could go and do, but if you go and do, you know, like I've done stuff like, 25 miles, 40k at let me just do the maths here, like, you know, 20 seconds a mile slower than marathon pace, or in K, so like running at so 20 seconds, about 15 14 seconds a K slower than marathon pace, and that's a good solid pace. That's a good hard run, but I can tolerate that, back that up, and after a couple of days I'm ready to go again. And I've stressed the durability by doing pretty much close to, well, nearly a marathon in training, and I'm definitely seeing some decoupling in heart rate during that run, but not as much as I see during a marathon, and I can just tolerate that a bit better.
It's that balance of intensity and duration, isn't it, which we talk about a lot when you talk about VO2 max. Like that's what comes up in the research about what does improve VO2 max. It's balancing intensity and duration, you know, over 4 to 8 minutes in the VO2 max research. Whereas in durability, it's you're maybe talking like, I don't know, in your case, like sort of 60 odd minutes versus 120 minutes, and then the intensity within that gets you that nice balance of targeting durability. If you do 60 minutes but you know, if we actually say you did it at marathon pace, or you know, 68 minutes for a half marathon, like that's maybe not enough duration to sort of like be a worthwhile piece of training.
And I think we could go we could you know, using that model, we could go the other extreme and go, okay, we're going to do a 2.5 hour run, but we're going to be, you know, say we're going to be, you know, at 60-70% of marathon pace, so it's really comfy. But I think then the intensity probably isn't enough to stress durability. Well, maybe it is if you're if you haven't been doing those sort of durations, but you know, so maybe that's your starting point, is to just build up to doing, if you're not doing it already, doing a 2 hour long run, and then you go, right, 2 hour 20 long run sometimes. But I don't think you necessarily need to go much longer than that. Like elite athletes aren't doing, the vast majority of elite marathoners aren't running for more than 2 hours 20 minutes in training. And so I don't see why someone slower would run further than that either. You know, maybe you want to do, you know, maybe if you are going to run a marathon in 4 hours, you want to do I still don't think that you should be doing much longer. I think you're just going to break down. You're going to be even less conditioned to run those durations if you're running a marathon in 4 hours. So
that's where you pull that intensity lever a bit more, isn't it? That's where you say, okay, like 2 hours, but a bit higher relative intensity for you than you might. I mean, and we're just thinking aloud really about how to train this, because like we said, there isn't. This is maybe where I think one of the things that you sort of realize when you get to like and I mean, we get told it like master's level, is like, actually there's a lot of things that you don't know the answer to, and you just have to take what research and then what anecdotal and real world experience there is, and try and fill in the gap. And that's the sort of sports science practitioner job, isn't it? It's actually, we don't know exactly. Sorry that you've listened to us for half an hour to then say, actually we don't know what training might impact durability. We have a rough idea, you know, from a combination of I guess understanding of human biology, but also seeing what elite athletes do. That sort of Darwinistic sports science, isn't it, where it survives, so you keep doing it.
100%. And you know, I think that's it's not science in the way that is, you know, it's published in a journal, but actually, like, training has definitely just evolved naturally to get close to probably what is optimal. Like if we, I think definitely something that's become more prominent in the last 10-20 years are those faster long runs at a little bit slower than marathon pace. And in terms of what's going on in East Africa, like Renato Canovo is a famous Italian coach, is a massive fan of, like you said, long runs at 90 to 95% of marathon pace. You can go and see what Kipchoge does. He's alternating a 40k run at a good fast pace and a 30k run at a good fast pace every other week. So they are doing, and when I'm talking about fast, like they're doing 40k runs, 520 a mile pace, 320 a k on hilly terrain at altitude. And you obviously, with the context of Kipchoge, well, he's racing a marathon in under 3-minute Ks. His breaking 2 was 250 a k. So we're still talking a bit of a chunk below marathon pace. Even if you factor in the altitude and the hilly terrain and the dirt roads, but they're not jogging around either. Like they're not just going for their easy Kenyan shuffle where they're going along at 10-minute mile pace. It's a pretty hard effort, and it's a hard because there's always reports of, people aren't sticking out that run. People are getting dropped and then they're from the back of the car that's following along, giving out the drinks. Not Kipchoge, but the ones who aren't quite as good. So, and his training partners are world-class athletes, so it's not a jog. But yeah, I think the two, I guess to summarize, I think the two big levers are the fueling, and the longer, harder stuff at around marathon pace. I think just long-term training year on year again is going to improve durability. Like converting some of those fast twitch fibers to more fatigue resistant slow twitch fibers, or having characteristics that are more like slow twitch fibers, which comes from just training many hours a year for many years. I think that's definitely going to make a difference. And going back to some of the research that has been done, like one of the there was a paper that looks at the what are the differences between an under 23 professional cyclist and a senior professional cyclist. Like, what is the difference in terms of their physiology that makes them, what makes them successful at the Grand Tour level in the senior athletes compared to the under 23s? Well, their VO2 max was very similar, their thresholds were very similar, their efficiency was very similar, but their durability was superior in the senior riders competing in the Tour compared to the under 23 ones. So they assessed it by just looking at what if they had to do a 5-minute max power output test after already doing something like 3,000 kilojoules of work, who was putting out more power? And it was the senior riders. And is that because they're just naturally better? They're the ones that have made it, if you like, into the senior ranks because they've got this attribute, or is it because they've been doing years and years of training more than the under 23 rider? Maybe a bit of both, but I would lean towards just doing years of training. You're going to burn more, get more slow twitch like fibers, be better at burning fats, all these sort of things.
Yeah, 100%. I was going to bring up that paper. I mean, like,
being to it, although I'm doing it very much from memory here. I haven't got it up, but I do.
No, you got it right. Yeah. And then, like, it got repeated in like World Tour versus Continental Tour, the level below, and it was the same. And again, you could say like, well, yeah, of course the riders in the Tour de France are going to be better than the ones that are riding, like, I don't know, like Tour of Britain sort of thing. Like, there's a difference in the athlete, but it just shows. And that under 23 paper is a nice way of showing training age. Like, the under 23 riders are only able to have a limited amount, realistically. Like, maybe some of them started riding seriously when they're like properly training when they're 15, 16, so they don't have a massive training age, whereas there's going to be World Tour riders that are 30 at their peak. They're going to have potentially double the training age. So like you said, long-term training is going to impact this, and long-term training is probably going to impact your VO2 max to a degree as well. If you've just started running,
certainly your economy as well. I think that's something that's got pretty good evidence, but actually your economy is something that just gets better and better, and even into like your 40s plus. The examples of there's been case studies of masters athletes who've got exceptional economy and they're in like their 60s and 70s, and So that suggests to me that it doesn't really deteriorate. If anything, it just gets better. Obviously, you're never going to know what their economy was like when they were younger, in the vast majority of cases. But if you've got masters athletes with exceptional, like world-class economy, then that says to me that it's just something that gets better over time, just more running.
So not really like something people can fix before their autumn marathon, but
no,
keep running.
no. But again, it's knowing what to focus on. Like for you, like, is it durability you need to go after, or you just not? Like I said, for me, like going into Valencia last year, I just wasn't fit enough. My threshold wasn't in a good enough place. I know that from lab testing, but I could have equally gone and run a half marathon and go, well, if my goal is to run a marathon in 2.5 hours, but I'm only running 74 minutes for a half, then that's not good enough. You need to be running a 72-minute half, probably, at least, if I want to run a 2:30 marathon. Like, that's you don't need to get in a lab to know that. So in which case, yeah, durability is important, but you should probably be emphasizing more the thresholds. Now, obviously, it's always going to be a balance. You're never going to go, right, purely chase durability, just do hard long runs. Just as easy as you're not going to do purely just do threshold work and not run for more than an hour. Like, and in my case in Valencia, I was still doing a couple of harder long runs. I still did a couple of them into it, just not as, but probably only like a couple. Whereas sometimes I've done 5, 6, 7, sort of, long runs of over 20 miles, 32K, not far off marathon pace. And I think going back to Valencia from memory, I literally did 2. And then snuck one, panicked one out after I realized my threshold was in a fantastic place. And that was obviously good enough to get me a 2:15. But hopefully, if I can work on that, then there's a bit more to come.
Yeah, I think sadly, after 40 minutes we've been talking, we don't have an answer for durability.
Yeah. But I think we've given it our best guess. I think we've updated to where the literature has got to. We'll probably maybe in a year's time we can revisit this, and there'll be some more papers out there that we can delve into and share what the science says. But at the minute, I think that's our summary is fueling, marathon, longer sessions at probably a bit slower for marathon pace, and just generally training for multiple years, what is going to get you more durable. And that, I think that is us durability wrapped up.
For now.
Till
we revisit it in a few years.
Yeah. Anything to plug this week?
Probably just chuck some more Q&A questions at us. We've had a few good ones already. We'll do a Q&A session at some episode at some point. So I'll put the link in the show notes and on our Twitter again.
Nice.
Nothing.
Yeah, shoot some questions away. We are going to do a Q&A topic at some point. I guess spoiler to what's coming up. So I'm going back to Valencia Marathon this year, and my secret goal, which I guess is not secret anymore, so I'm going to share it on this podcast, is to have a go at the European Road Running Championships qualifying time, which is 2:12:30. Now we'll see how training goes, but and I will be pacing it sensibly using the heart rate method that I've shared previously. So I'm not just mindlessly go out at 2:12:30 pace if I'm not in shape to do that. But that is my goal, is to go and run that time at Valencia. That's what I'm going to be building towards. And as part of that, we're going to do a mini series, which I think we're going to call Road to Valencia. Is that something like that?
Can we steal that name? We might need to come up with something else. I feel really bad about ripping off Inside Running. They've been ripped off enough.
Brady can cope with it. He'll see it as we're just doing it as a mark of respect, I think, aren't we? The good work that they do.
If we say that,
we'll just that's how we'll frame it. So yeah, we're gonna do a series, try and get something out weekly, but much shorter episodes on how my preparations are going towards Valencia, but specifically actually looking at the sports science angle of it. So I was in the lab yesterday, did a submax test, and first episode will be, right, what's that data saying? And sort of like we've talked about in this episode here, is my threshold good enough? is my VO2 max good enough? Is my economy good enough? Or is it my durability that we need to work on? So the theme is going to be, right, trying to use a science-based approach to optimizing marathon training. What interventions can I put in place to try and get outside of training that are going to help me run the fastest marathon I can? So obviously a lot of it, the thing that's going to get you the best response or have the biggest influence is the training that you do. But there are other things that I'm going to talk about that I'm going to hopefully will help influence the training. So if you want to follow along on that journey, then yeah, stay tuned. Next week we will we'll go through my data that I collected yesterday. I had to finish doing that first, and I decide do the analysis and go, actually, what is it that I need to work on? But if that's something that interests you, then yeah, tune in next week. Sound good? Anything else to add?
Yeah, that's it from us. See you next week.
Yeah, see you next week. Thank you, everybody.
Catch you soon.
Catch you soon. Yeah, great.